guys, welcome back. We're here to talk about all the books that I read in January. This is not going to be a very extensive video. I don't have very many that I actually finished reading, but they are definitely worth mentioning. The first one I finished was Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto, and this apparently, I had found this at like a secondhand store. This book was $1. I love Japanese literature. Apparently this author is a very popular author in Japan. I don't know how many of her books have been translated into English. I haven't looked into it too much. I would definitely be interested in reading more by this author. This one actually has 2 stories in it. The first one being Kitchen, and then the second one being Moonlight Shadow. And I felt that I liked Kitchen a lot more than I liked Moonlight Shadow. I don't really recall Moonlight Shadow very closely. So this part is Moonlight Shadow and this part is Kitchen. So that one obviously stood out to me a lot more. You really get to know our characters. This follows one character who is going through this very deep grieving of the loss of, I want to say, her parents. So she's basically an orphan at this point. And one thing that makes her feel good is the kitchen. She loves working in the kitchen and she loves making food for everybody. She goes to stay with a friend and this friend's transgender parent, and just the life that they all share together. They do end up going their separate ways. Our main character does move out and goes off to live her life for a while, and then at a certain point she comes back for an event that happens. So it is kind of hard to say a whole lot about this book. Plot-wise, not a lot happens, but you just get to know and love these characters. The next one is My Son's Secret by Roberta Kagan. This is the first in a series. This is called The Jews, the Third Reich, and a Web of Secrets. This essentially is a love story between a German woman and a Jewish man named Abram, and I thought it was partly interesting because the female, she grew up thinking what they were trying to say about Jewish people, just really bad things about Jewish people, and she was raised to think those things too until she met Abram, and then she ended up falling for him and they got pregnant. So because of everything, because of the forbidden romance that they had, she ends up leaving her home and her family to live with Abram and his mother. She feels so worried about being a burden, about her place there, and she did not expect the warm welcome from Abram's mom. And they go about their lives, they raise their son and everything else, but at a certain point something happens. I kind of forgot what happens, but she and her son do end up having to leave, and then she finds that she needs to conceal the fact that their son is Jewish, part Jewish. So this becomes kind of difficult. The next book, I believe, is about the son, and I'm kind of torn whether or not I am going to continue on with the series. I would say that there's just other things that I'm more interested in, so I don't know that I really want to continue on with this, and I'm kind of dreading telling my mom that because she loved this book. I mean, she was so excited about this book. She was just very, very excited about this book. She's like, you have to read this. If I hadn't gone to visit her, she was going to send them to me in the mail. Like, she really wanted me to read them. Of course, I really enjoyed this book. I don't know that I would love to continue on with the series, but I do think it was really good. You are sick and tired of books that take place during the war. This is more of a love story, more about a forbidden love story than it is about the war. The next 2 are books that I read for the Read It or Unhaul It. If you have not seen that vlog, you can absolutely go check that out. The recap is I read Look Me in the Eye by John Elder Robinson, My Life with Asperger's, and this took me by surprise because this is the older brother of Augustin Burroughs, and I read Augustin Burroughs' Running with Scissors so long ago. I have a few other books by him. I love him as an author. They just don't have the same name, so I would have never guessed that this is Augustin Burroughs' older brother. It's a memoir of his life and what it's like in growing up in a time where they didn't even have a diagnosis for Asperger's, and most notably, I would say, is his feelings of loneliness throughout his life and not understanding why other kids don't like him. I mean, he does know that his reactions to things, while are very logical in his mind, other people don't like the way he reacts or says things or does things. And he had to learn he just had to learn how to be different, I guess, how to act more like other people, and realize that certain behaviors were not the best way to talk with other people or interact with other people, just by trial and error. But that had left him with a lot of people just not wanting to be around him, and that just breaks my heart so much. I mean, I think even if you don't have Asperger's, at different times of your life you may have felt this crippling loneliness that he grew up with his whole life. There is a little bit of talk about his parents. So kind of circling back to, because I connect this book so closely to Running with Scissors, because I read Running with Scissors, and so I know from Augustin Burroughs' perspective of his parents. But he even says at the beginning, or in the introduction, or not in the introduction, Augustin Burroughs actually wrote the introduction for this book, and they do say that their recollections of their parents are like so completely different interactions. I just think that that's really interesting. That also reminds me of like me and my sister, and the way our memories are so different. Her memories with my mom versus my memories with our mom, and why they're so different. Even though it's the same house, and I guess it's just our experiences are still very, very different, and it just boggles my mind. That's why I love things about memory so much. I just find it so incredibly interesting. But anyways, I did find this book really good. I didn't actually put in there whether or not I'm going to unhaul these books in the read it or unhaul it video. My mistake. But this is one of those books, I'm glad that I read it, but I don't think this is a book that I would return to. So I do think I'm going to go ahead and unhaul this book. It is quite damaged, so I don't believe that my buy sell trade store will take it, so I'm gonna go find a little free library for it. I'm trying to think there's literally anything else I need to say about this book, but I think I covered it. I would say that the storytelling method reads a little bit more like every chapter, while it is chronological, so it is seamless in one story. They kind of feel like little short stories and little glimpses into different memories, and like he will introduce a chapter with the story of this event that happened, and then conclude it of how he learned to cope with Asperger's somehow, or how Asperger's affected his life, or something like that, as kind of a conclusion to that chapter. So it kind of feels like short stories. But the next one, I actually ended up reading 2 books for that. The next one is Two Nights in Lisbon by Chris Pavone. I'm not sure the pronunciation of his name. This was a thriller. I'm gonna call it a political thriller, domestic thriller, political thriller. It was really good. Honestly, this is not my comfort zone kind of book, but I ended up really enjoying this book. It follows a woman who marries a younger man. They go on a business trip, her husband's business trip, to Lisbon. He wakes up one morning. She's taken something to help her sleep because she's jet lagged. So when she wakes up, her husband is missing, and she goes to the police. She pretty immediately goes to the American embassy to find her husband, to get somebody to help her find her husband. And they can't do anything. He hasn't been missing for very long. But something about this case makes a woman at the embassy kind of give it a little bit more attention. The embassy gets involved. As we're going through this story, we are tracking the progress of finding her husband, and then we also are getting flashbacks into her past and why she chooses to remain so mysterious. And I don't want to spoil too much. This is quite large, but it kept me entertained the whole time, and it kept me guessing, and it kept me going, wait, what's happening? And I did not see the twist coming. I will say that it surprised me at the end. So yeah, if you really like thrillers, I do recommend this. And then we have 2 other books that I listened to that I checked out through my library. We have Earth Eater by Dolores Reyes. I have to recall what this book is about. Oh, yes. I remember. I gave it 3 stars. This was really interesting. It is a horror magical realism story. It's also very short, placed in Argentina. And this follows a girl who finds herself compelled to eat dirt, and eating dirt gives her visions. And she uses these visions to solve a crime, or crimes, plural, and kind of help find victims or find out what happens to victims. It's really hard to describe this book, to be honest. Because of her gift, she also finds people coming to her to help her solve and find answers for what has happened to their loved ones. And I did end up giving this 3 stars, but I do think I would bump it up to 3.5 stars. I did really enjoy this book. I thought it was really interesting, very different, unique perspective. The reason it's not 4 stars though, I don't know. It just feels like there is something missing. I just can't put my finger on it. But yeah, I recommend this book. It's pretty good. And then the last book is A New Lease on Death by Olivia Black. And I almost feel like this was probably the best book of the month. I really enjoyed this book. Right up my alley. It is like a cozy mystery, and it was so well done. It was so cleverly written. You're following this main character who is a ghost, and she has a roommate who is a living person, and she has been sharing this space with her for a while, and it seems like this woman kind of senses that she's there. But then one day, the neighbor across the hall, this guy, ends up dead, and the roommate and the ghost find themselves in the middle of like kind of trying to solve that mystery. And then while they are solving that mystery, they're kind of uncovering what happened to our main character, the ghost, and what led to her death. There is a trigger warning for suicide, but overall I just loved this book, and I hope, let me see, a new lease. The way it ended, it feels like it has to be a series, and it is. It is the first of the supernatural mystery. Anxiously waiting for the second book because this was so good. I highly recommend this if you like mysteries, if you like ghost stories, that sort of thing. I can't say enough about this book. I really like it. Do you know that old TV show, Ghost Whisperer? Kind of feels like Ghost Whisperer, like in a really cool way. All right, so I read a total of 6 books this month, and I would say probably Earth Eater is probably the least liked, and A New Lease on Death is the most like. No, I don't know. It's a toss-up between Earth Eater and My Son's Secret. They were both really good, but they're probably the ones that really aren't going to stick with me for the long term. So they're probably the lowest rated of the month. And then the best book of the month is A New Lease on Death. So I hope that you enjoyed this. Thank you all so much for watching. What was the best book that you read in January? Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.